For more than a decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
I'm laughing on this Saturday morning to start because I'm looking backstage as the video is playing and the intro is happening, and I can see Dave awkwardly sort of futzing around with the hat, and he's trying to figure out the best way to wear the hat, and it's a good hat. That's a Guns Bakery hat. So I don't know if it's old school or if it's a new hat that looks old school, but whatever it is, it's a good quality hat. And the reason I'm laughing is my aunt Shayla is in town from Ottawa, and we were having dinner last night. And so my aunt said, "Why does that Dave always wear a hat backwards? Isn't that old fashioned to wear a backwards hat?" And so I find it very funny that today, for the first time in God knows how long, you're wearing a forwards hat, yet you're uncomfortable doing so. So the whole thing is coming full circle since last night. And before you answer, I'm going to say good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. And for all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Now, answer.
Well, I was at our favorite local bakery in the North End on Selkirk Avenue the other day, and one of the owners saw me, and I'm a frequent participant in their delicious wares.
You're a frequent purveyor of their products.
Yes. So he gave me this fancy Guns Bakery snapback hat. Now, I'm not a hats forward kind of guy, as folks know, but it's a snapback, so it's not going to make a lot of sense to wear it backwards. So I'm wearing it forward just to give a little shout out to our friends at Guns.
There you go. So the story checks out, but I found that very funny that my aunt, yesterday, good timing all around. That was very enjoyable and entertaining to me. With that, we welcome everybody to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show on this Saturday. Welcome to the Gun Show. That's funny, is your boy Bruce. He says, "Welcome to the Gun Show." We say good morning to everybody. Welcome, happy Saturday. Hope everyone's doing well as we get into 2 hours of Winnipeg Jets talk. I gotta say, Dave, what a thrilling conclusion to the Stanley Cup final. The season has finally come to an end. An epic battle between the Oilers and the Panthers. And who would have thought who came out on top, lifting Lord Stanley? Wait, hang on. I'm hearing a report. The Cup final starts tonight. Apparently, they just decided to take a small 2-week break in the middle of it for no damn good reason whatsoever, so that the season can drag on as long as humanly possible.
It's bizarre. It makes no sense. And they can say, well, we're doing it for this reason or that reason, but talk about killing your own momentum. Yeah. I mean, who cares? Like, honestly, I mean, people will care again tonight because it's game one, but like, it is defying logic to take this long a break. And when did the last game end?
Last Sunday? Was that
it was Sunday, right? Yeah, it was the Oilers beat Dallas last Sunday. So to give them that much time off, to kind of lose the momentum, the excitement, I don't know. I don't get it. Like, I understand wanting to not be in competition with the NBA and trying to, but you knew what the NBA schedule was at this point. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I don't really understand it. And it's a little silly because like first day of like media availability was like 2 days ago.
No, I thought it was
yesterday?
Media day. I thought it was yesterday.
Maybe it was, so I mean, I'm just saying, like, it's nuts, right? To be that. I mean, we've talked about this for so long. I mean, the NHL season is way too long.
Yeah.
It needs to start earlier in October. It needs to end earlier. It just doesn't make any sense why, the NHL does things the way they do things. They're so sometimes arrogant in their planning that they think that people care that much.
Yeah.
And that they're willing. I mean, again, and this is, I'll be on a soapbox for a second, but the idea that free agency is on July 1st, which is a day you should be, celebrating this country, a day you should be with your family. And instead it's, devoted to, well, for some of us to focusing on free agency, which in Winnipeg is never generally a very busy day at the best of times.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is, it's just like, it's stupid. It doesn't make any sense. Like, the NHL season in all its parts should be wrapped up by July. And, they could have done they could, like I said, the NHL season started this year, October 11th, right? That was the first Jets game.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me why it drags this long. And I understand, like I said, but to take a week break, to do the draft in the end of June, to do the development camp into July. And I mean, again, it's condensed, it's fun. We get a lot of content out of it, but it's just kind of a little silly, but to do it that way,
I think it would be the word that can be used, is that it's the kind of thing that, maybe you catch the last couple minutes. I don't know anybody who's going to religiously sit in front of it. Anyone outside of, Edmonton and Florida, I guess, or South, who's going to sit religiously in front of their TV on a beautiful night and watch these playoffs. I mean, I'm not. I'll be forthcoming as I need to be. I will watch maybe the third period or the latter half of the third period. Game is close, but it's certainly not going to be taking over my time. And I acknowledge that. I'm saying that on a hockey show, talking about it right now, but there's a difference, of course, because of the affiliation and the lack thereof of affiliation with the teams that are competing, and it just not ever go as long as it does. But
although interestingly, Drew, I will do one quick, we can tie this into the Jets. And we can ask the folks in the chat and folks who are listening at home. They can always answer in the comments, or who are listening to the podcast, I should say. If you had to choose a team between Edmonton and Florida, so looking at the connections, just one sec, looking at the connections, because Paulie Edmonds wrote about this in the Global News, so we had it I had it featured on the site a couple days ago.
Yeah.
So on Florida side, Paul Maurice, Jamie Compon, Kevin Stenlund, Dmitry Kulikov. So you got 4 ties there. Now on the Edmonton side, defenseman Mark Stewart now is an assistant coach. You've got Calvin Pickard he's born in Moncton, but lives in Winnipeg, brought up in Winnipeg, and I think that's about it. I think there's only 2. Oh, and Lindsay Gullett, who used to be in the production side of things for.
Wow.
I went deep on that one.
Going deep on that one.
I texted Lindsay. I messaged him. I said, "Hey, just so you know, I give you a shout out. You got mentioned as maybe part of the reason why folks want to cheer for the Oilers." Now, of course, we know the Smythe division hate, but I wondered when Winnipeg got over when they swept the Oilers in 2020, does that kind of erase those bad memories? Again, like I said, we'll see. So I'm just curious. And of course, we have to mention Evander Kane. Yeah. Former Winnipeg Jet is also on the Oilers. So
I have to say the idea of cheering for the Oilers, under any circumstances, makes my skin crawl.
Sure.
So for me, it's not even a question. For me, not that I really care, not that I have a rooting interest, but if I had to choose one who my preference is to see win the Cup final, it would be the Florida Panthers. But the idea of somebody from Winnipeg, after all the torture that the Oilers put Jets 1.0 through, all of a sudden waving the Oilers banner, it's so sour to me. It's so. It just doesn't work for me. I can't comprehend that. Mm-hmm. So, given if you wanted to know my opinion, and I'm sure everybody does, everyone's
sure. I'm going to make a poll. I'm going to make a poll while you're
there you go. While I'm talking, you can make a poll. The answer to me is the Florida Panthers. I would absolutely say Panthers. I cannot cheer for the Edmonton Oilers. Cheering for I don't really care about this, bring the cup back to Canada idea with all.
Well, Drew, just to interject, ironically, of course, and this is what I always laugh at. If you really wanted the cup to come back to Canada, you really need to just pick the team that has the most Canadians on it.
Of course.
So it's always like, you're like, oh, it's going to be a Canadian team. But yet if they have more Americans and Swedes and Russians, the cups are going to be, the cup will be elsewhere. I understand, though, of course, that if a Canadian team hasn't won in a long time, so that's a factor. But it's like when Vegas won the cup last year, and it was in Manitoba half the time because of all the ties to this province. So, anyways,
exactly, that's the part I never quite understood, that that Canadians are going to cheer. I mean, no, I'm never going to cheer for the Leafs. Never going to.
Oh, hold on, we got to give Brass Bonanza a shout out, Evan Cormier.
Yeah.
Hold on. I'm going to get that one up there. I got to get that one up there, Drew. You can, there we go. Evan Cormier was a goalie who played for the Moose. And more importantly, he also was signed to a Jets contract because if you remember, he ended up being the third goalie for the Jets that year. Although interestingly, he actually could have been the starting goaltender for the Moose in the playoffs against Milwaukee because he actually was playing a lot better than Mikkel Burden. So that's just a little bit of potpourri, if you will.
There you go. Dave's always got a way to tie it back to the Moose. That's the important part. So no, the answer to me is the Florida Panthers, and it's not even much of a question. And I don't understand how anybody in Winnipeg can cheer for the Oilers. It makes my skin crawl a little bit. I'm strong on this one. Let's get back to the focus of this program, the Winnipeg Jets. We're gonna have Jamie Thomas. He's gonna join us at the second hour, 10 o'clock hour. So you can stay tuned for that. But not a lot of Jets news. I'll be blunt. There was not anything Jets related to speak of. Any hard news regarding the Winnipeg Jets. The only, commentary regarding the Jets has sort of been, allusions to the future of Nikolai Ehlers, where it was reported that Ehlers allegedly has no interest in re-signing with the Winnipeg Jets, still under contract for another year. So, I mean, I would say cart before the horse, anybody who's making proclamations at that point in time, because shout out to Pierre LeBrun, who, of course, last summer said that the idea that the Jets were going to be able to re-sign Scheifele and Hellebuyck, he said, and I quote, because I'll never forget it, because it's always important to speak in absolutes when you're just parroting whatever an agent tells you, is that ship has sailed regarding Hellebuyck and Scheifele re-signing with the Winnipeg Jets. Oh, lo and behold, Scheifele and Hellebuyck re-signed with the Winnipeg Jets. So, the idea that anyone knows for certain what Nikolai Ehlers is going to do a year from now, if he's still a member of the Jets, to me is a bit of a fallacy. But, so that was the talk there, that Ehlers has no interest in re-signing with the Winnipeg Jets. We'll see about that. And then, of course, the report came from Chris Johnson. And then this was spoken about on Winnipeg Sports Talk earlier this week with Kenny and Hustler, saying that Sean Monahan is going to go to free agency, which means that, not to say that he won't necessarily re-sign with the Winnipeg Jets, or, that ship has sailed, as I say, with my eyes rolling back in my head, but that he's going to at least explore the market come July 1st. So I guess, Dave, let's start with the Monahan news. And how do you think that maybe impacts some of the Winnipeg Jets plans between now and free agency, and then into free agency as the team looks to build out its roster for the 24-25 season?
I mean, it's a conundrum. It's a conundrum the Jets have been in many times before. What do? Do you give a guy term, which is obviously what Sean Monahan's going to want, the money you can afford, right? Because you can make
reason, but yes.
Within reason, yeah, but you can make that work. The issue for the Jets is term, and you don't want to tie yourself to a guy who is going to take up a spot conceivably for someone who you're grooming to be kind of in that position. So again, we go back to Brad Lambert. Now, is Brad Lambert ready to be a full-time center in the NHL? I don't know. I can't speak to that.
Or even Cole Perfetti, as
sure,
still willing to consider him as an option there as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's true. But well, I mean, again, in Cole Perfetti has a few more. Well, he was drafted a couple of years earlier, of course. But right. So, yeah, I mean, is he ready? Are you ready to think that Cole Perfetti is going to be the center who's going to get your team through? And then maybe maybe you have Lambert and Ehlers on your wings. I don't know, but and we'll see, right? It'll be interesting to see. Scott Arniel talked about Cole Perfetti's usage and getting him more activated or whatnot, but like, I'm not certain what it's going to do, but that Sean Monahan, again, with his ability to play, and he was so healthy this year. He played 84 hockey games instead of just 82, just to prove, Drew, that he was capable of playing, a lot of games this season. So for the Jets perspective, I mean, you have to look at again, you're right. The cap definitely does matter. It definitely factors in terms of, we always want to point out that, well, it looks like the Jets have a lot of money right now. A lot of that's going to go to Connor Hellebuyck and Mark Scheifele, whose extensions kick in this upcoming season. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I mean, to me, Sean Monahan is still like a very, but he's 29. So you got to look at that and think, okay, he's 29. You're going to give him, or he's going to be looking for, I can't think less than 4-year deal.
4 years would probably be at the minimum, I would say.
That's what I'm saying. So he's looking from a 4 to 6 year deal. Now, again, if you're the Winnipeg Jets and you're looking at your window, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, we've got an opportunity to win a Stanley Cup in the next few years, then you're probably prepared to allow Lambert to marinate or move him to the wing if you can have an established center. And it's not so much that, again, this is one of the things that we always talk about, but like it's about depth, right, Drew? So like, let's say Monahan you don't sign Monahan and you give Lambert that opportunity to be your second line center. What happens if Lambert gets injured?
What
And then you've got
struggles like most
struggles, injuries,
would.
whatever. But point is, like, isn't ready for that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're trying to shoehorn a player in or acquire a player that you potentially could have had. And so, again, like, it looks kind of similar to, if you remember, the year that the Jets acquired Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon. And everybody said, oh, well, that's going to do a lot to solidify the D. But it also did a lot to block the D, right? It meant that Dylan Samberg, Ville Heinola stayed in the minors a little bit longer, didn't necessarily get the opportunities, the reps that would have maybe given them those opportunities to become faster players in the NHL because they were kind of stunted in that regard. So that's kind of that conundrum that this team is running into, I think, is that on one hand, you have an established player who clearly fit the chemistry of this team. Not the speed, of course, because he's not the fastest player by any stretch of the imagination.
But he did he brought a lot of positive attributes to what the team needed last year and what the team was looking for.
That's right. And so from that perspective, especially on the power play where he seemed to fit really well, there's a lot of reasons why you like Sean Monahan. But I would think that if he's going to get to free agency, if the Jets aren't going to be able to lock him up in the next 3 weeks, the likelihood of him staying here versus, signing with another team who's probably going to give him, more money, more term, that probably precludes the Winnipeg Jets from being in on the sweepstakes. I mean, the whole point of, your season ending is that Kevin Cheveldayoff is doing the work now with these teams to get players signed, right? Dylan DeMello, Brendan Dillon, we'll talk about them later. But the idea just being that, your best opportunity to sign players is not in free agency at July 1st. Like I said, when you have to compete with 31 other hockey teams, it's when you have this exclusive window to be the team that signs these players right now.
Well, and that's where the Jets have excelled. The Jets have excelled at re-signing their own players, probably in a fashion that has been better than anyone would have expected. I mean, you go through the list. I mean, I got to put this comment up because, or I'll comment about it. I saw in the chat that, let me see if I can find it. B.A. Booger or somebody like that said, why would anyone re-sign in Winnipeg? I mean, except for that comment, despite its negativity, is also proven that is, all the number of players who have signed in Winnipeg when free agency was right next door. I mean, Scheifele and Hellebuck, Niederreiter, Namestnikov. I mean, that's just off the top of my head at the snap, in the last year and a bit. Those guys have all re-signed here in Winnipeg and have all decided to commit to Winnipeg when other alternatives were right there or were nearby. So, it's not that the Jets can't re-sign Sean Monahan. And in fact, I think that they probably need to re-sign him because simply looking at the roster without him, I mean, you are very thin up the middle. You are thin with, the most important position among your forward group. I mean, yes, you have Vlad Namestnikov, and he is sort of that Swiss Army player. And you could use him up and down your lineup. And we saw it last year where he was up and down the lineup and at times played in a elevated center role. But I don't think that's what you want necessarily starting the year or as your go forward plan. No disrespect to Namestnikov. It just doesn't seem like that would be the ideal solution. So it's why it's almost getting Monahan is that much more important for the team for next year and for the window you spoke about, Dave. I mean, look, hold
on, Drew. Sorry to interrupt you, but we got to give Walk with Vince a big shout out. Who's currently on his honeymoon in Hong Kong, but he's watching IC. So
that's love right there.
That's dedication.
Husbands, wives, spouses, they come and go. A legal curve is forever.
Exactly. It's currently 10:21 p.m. in Hong Kong. So big thanks to Walk with Vince to give us some attention during the honeymoon.
And there's Spency following up with rest in peace, Walk with Vince's marriage. But that we do appreciate the love there. Thank you for joining us from Hong Kong. Congratulations on your nuptials and your on being on your honeymoon. That's where the Jets they are sort of in that rock and a hard place, like you mentioned, Dave, where you don't want to stunt growth of your young talent, but at the same time, you're still in that win now mode. You are
Right.
still looking to build upon your last 2 first round playoff exits. You don't, I mean, I presume, I know the players don't want that to be, their ceiling. I would assume that a lot of the organization doesn't want that to be their ceiling. So how do you get past that as your ceiling? And I don't know that, starting your next season with, let's for argument's sake say Ehlers, Lambert, and Perfetti elevates your team. Maybe they gel well, or maybe Lambert's transition to the NHL is better than anyone could have expected. But still,
Right.
It's hard to believe that that's necessarily a plan. Hope and pray isn't what I would describe as a plan per se.
No, and I've got this comment up from Stephanie who says Monty provides all of the skills that the Jets forward group is currently weak on, while also providing a cushion to allow Perfetti and Lambert to grow into their optimal roles. Signing him is a no-brainer. So again, it's not that we would disagree with that statement. It's just kind of the term, right? And again, sometimes it's kind of like, and I've mentioned this, I think, on last week's show, but it's like Blake Wheeler's contract, right? If the Jets win a Stanley Cup, you don't even think twice about that Blake Wheeler contract.
Banners fly forever.
That's right. And so they sign him, and look, credit to Blake Wheeler. They sign him and they have back-to-back. He has back-to-back 91-point seasons for the Winnipeg Jets. And you didn't really start to see that deterioration till like the second last year of the deal. But the fact of the matter is that you're willing, as Drew just said, if you win a cup, you're willing to accept 2-3 years of Sean Monahan playing in a reduced role. Maybe not such a bad thing if you can win a cup with him,
right?
And to me, like Kenny's water bottle pointed out, I think it was KWB, but like the idea of the center depth, and we talked about this forward group and all the depth we spoke about this year. Well, and I definitely think there's a training camp is going to set up so much for this group, and it's going to be because we can't know. Like, I'm not in Finland right now watching Brad Lambert train, so we don't know. Everybody can say Brad Lambert, he's going to be ready. I have no idea. We don't know. This is incumbent on him. The Jets stay in contact with him.
Yeah,
Jimmy Roy, Mike Keane,
that he hopes to be ready, but again, that's a long way off from knowing for sure come September.
Yes, and so all I would say is that it's more of it. You think that these guys will continue to make that growth, like we saw with Ville Heinola last summer. Remember when I interviewed him last year with the Moose, he was a determined guy. Like, he was making that Jets roster. That's what he talked about, his summer plans.
Mm-hmm.
And he did, obviously, barring that injury against the Senators in Ottawa where he, broke his ankle. But like, to me, you want to see the guys do the work in the summer to get to that next level, to be ready to take a role. That's what they all do. And look, and we'll talk about Elias Salamonson because I think he's worth mentioning. And he was just interviewed. His assistant coach in Schlefka was interviewed, and I'll give you those quotes later. But my point is, one of the things that he said is he's ready to take an NHL job. Now, Jets fans will be. I was going to say Jets fans and the Jets themselves will be overjoyed if the the 2022 second rounder can come here and take a spot on the right side of the defense. So you're always wanting to see what these guys can do in training camp, but that's a question. It's a big question to go into the season with, that uncertainty.
And that's the problem is, once training camp starts, I mean, and your best laid plans, if all of a sudden they go a little bit haywire, well, it's almost too late at that point in time to find an alternative. I mean, we know that, trades, pure hockey trades, as they like to say, where, you trade one asset for another team's asset, just don't happen all that often. General managers love to talk about it. Well, we wanted to do this, but we didn't do it, or we got close, but we couldn't do it, blah, 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 blah. So all of a sudden, if the guy that you had penciled in to be on your defense isn't on your defense, then everyone else that, was below him gets elevated further. And that doesn't even speak to Dylan DeMello and his status here in Winnipeg, because he's still, of course, as important a free agent. I mean, look, I was talking to a number of different people this week just about the Jets offseason and where things are going to go and what the priority needs to be. You look at the right side of the Jets defense as it is today, with Dylan DeMello, about to hit free agency. I mean, that right side of the defense is just a shining red alarm button that's saying help, help, help. Because you can't start the season with that as your right side without Dylan DeMello at the very least. And Dylan DeMello's price tag has increased dramatically because I think, I think we mentioned this on last week's show, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, teams around the league now are beginning to, I think, fully acknowledge how important he can be and how steady he can be and how he can be an asset. Now, is he ideally for most teams a top pairing right side defenseman? No, he's not. Has he played that role very well for the Winnipeg Jets? Yes. Does he fit like a glove with Josh Morrissey? No question about it. But for a lot of teams around the league who are looking at Dylan DeMello as a guy who is a maintenance-free addition to your team, where, as Paul Maurice once said, coach's porn, where, you just slot him in there and you leave him alone and you know what you're going to get from him and he's going to be Mr. Consistent. Well, that is, there's a tremendous value to that, especially if he might be able to sort of be that comfort for a player on the left side. Maybe you have a left side defenseman who hasn't been able to find that perfect partner on the right side. Well, I would suspect a lot of general managers have looked at Dylan DeMello and the Jets' usage of him and how he's played with Josh Morrissey over the last number of years and said, hey, this can be that guy for our team. And yes, it might cost us a little bit more money than people would think, or than that the traditional numbers would dictate, but look at everything else, underneath that and why it's so important for our team moving forward.
Look, I mean, in an ideal world, I know folks want Brendan Dillon, Dylan DeMello to resign. I don't see it happening. I don't
see Brendan Dillon resigning.
No, I don't see it either. So thank you, Jax. You said nice hat. Got it yesterday. But the point is that I think it's one of those, if you're going to look at Dylan DeMello, wouldn't he be perfectly paired alongside Dylan Samberg in your second pairing?
Absolutely.
I mean, he talk about a guy who's prepared, like Dylan Samberg.
If you can find somebody to play with
that's my whole point. So you're leaving a hole, but Dylan DeMello is an ideal second pairing right side defenseman for the Winnipeg Jets. And anybody who says otherwise is not paying attention. You can say this team isn't good enough. Well, again, I'm saying you drop him down. Now that leaves a big hole. We can talk about filling that hole in a second. But I think that you've spoken about a guy who's set down roots. He has a child. He's having another one on the way. He spoke about this community, about being part of this team. I think there's no question about it that Dylan DeMello wants to sign with the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised it hasn't happened yet, to be honest.
Well, and again, like, it's interesting because they talked about Kevin Cheveldayoff talked about it in one of the availabilities with him. I think it was the end of the season when he was asked about it, and quite frankly, I think he probably wanted to sign one, not both. Just looking at the reality of the cap, and so he didn't want to say, "Sure, I'm going to sign you, Dylan DeMello. I'm going to leave you, Brendan Dillon, twisting in the wind," because he knew that could create some ill feelings. Now, in theory, instead of upsetting one player, now you're upsetting two. But like I said, I think their exclusive window. They're focused on the draft, but the Jets don't have a big draft board. They've got 4 draft picks in 2024, the 28th and 29th of June. So there's only 4 picks. They're not making a pick right now on the Friday night in the first rounds. They'll start on Saturday morning, coincidentally, or Saturday afternoon, I guess. It'll be right after this show. I think the draft starts usually around 10 o'clock in the morning, right, Drew? So
whenever the second day is going to be, whenever that second day is.
Yeah. So I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens in that regard. But the point is that they've got to be focused on getting something done.
Pacific time this year, so I don't even know what time. That's a good point because it's in Vegas. So
right.
Yeah. Is it Vegas in Pacific time right now, or is it Mountain time? I'll have to.
I think they're Mountain, aren't they?
They might be. They flip, then they don't do daylight savings, I think. Yeah, they're Pacific time. It's 7:30 in Vegas right now. So
Oh.
I don't know what time the second day of the draft is going to start. That's a good question you posed there, Mr. Miller.
All right, well, we'll figure that out because that'll be very pertinent to that Saturday's Illegal Curve Hockey Show in a couple of weeks. But
yeah, you're right about that.
Well, and Getter Down is asking, is Kyle Capobianco still part of the Jets organization? He is a UFA, or maybe a Group 6 RFA actually, but he's
Group 6 UFA.
UFA, sorry.
Yeah.
So he's and remember, defenseman of the year. So he'll have his choices of where he wants to go.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm him, probably, it's a weird year, right? Because the defense was healthy. There was no need for recalls this year on the defensive side of things because the defense stayed healthy for the most part. And when they didn't, they had an extra couple of guys generally, or up there in Logan Stanley, right? So it wasn't a big necessity to make recalls from the American Hockey League team. But I mean, to me, Drew, I agree with you. I think you can't. Let's put it this way: if you want to be a contending team, and we saw the Jets defense get exposed last year, or in the playoffs, I should say, not last year, because last year they were a good, solid defensive team. But you can't have no Dylan DeMello, Neil Pionk, and Nate Schmidt, because that's a recipe for problems. That's a recipe for a step back. So to me, you got to get Dylan DeMello signed, and then you'll address the need to fill that top pairing right side, because Dylan DeMello, as you said with the Paul Maurice quote, is just a steady defenseman. And if you can have him for the next, he's 30, or he might have already turned 31. Yeah, I think he's 31. He turned 31. So he's 31. If you can have him for the next 4 or 5 years, honestly, so he slides down to a third pairing at some point, especially if Salamonson, let's again, the big unknown, if you can acquire that elusive top pairing right side defenseman.
Yeah.
And you've got Dylan DeMello as your second pairing. And we know that Nate Schmidt or Neil Pionk, let's put one of those guys in that third pairing role. Right. And then eventually Elias Salamonson supplants one of those guys, and then potentially supplants Dylan DeMello to move him down to your third pairing when he's hitting that 34, 35. That to me is realistic. Now, of course, it's going to create a hole somewhere else to acquire that piece, Drew, but I think that's something the Jets have to do.
Time will tell, but the questions are certainly there, and the date and time for when it's going to occur is rapidly approaching. We go to break for the first time on this morning show. Now you're wondering, based on last week's show, did I remove the Rady Center ad advertising the dinner that happened in May? The answer is no, because I intended to do it and then completely forgot until about 20 minutes ago. So as you can see, we're all in off-season mode here, even as the show rolls
And
on.
Listen to Dallas, Drew. Listen to Dallas.
Smash the like button, folks. That's what Dallas is telling you to do. Get on that. Smash the like button. More Jets talk to come after these commercial messages. And then, of course, Jamie Thomas at the top of hour number 2, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. It's Saturday morning. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show rolls on this Saturday morning. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk. Ezra's at a bar mitzvah this morning, so that's why he's not here. So we wish Ezra well. He'll be back next week, unless he has something else going on. I really don't know. When he shows up whenever he wants to show up, right?
That's true. We do have the poll up, as Rob Mahoney is noting. So it is a miracle. I did get it going. So if you want to vote, Oilers, Panthers, neither.
Neither is fine with me as well. But I think the neither might be the runaway winner, as it in this very intense poll about who your rooting interests lie with, if you have any, in the upcoming Stanley Cup playoffs, or the Stanley Cup final, which will start later tonight. Yeah, and the real question, Kenny, is I'm going to remember by next Saturday to remove the football or not. That's the one that's up in the air. I have 7 days to try and remember something. My track record is clearly not that great on that, but time will tell on that front.
Jay Miller's asking when Wendell's coming to the Peg, and it's like, well, Wendell was in the Peg 2 weeks ago.
That's right. We're just going back in time. It was 2 weeks ago. It was a great night.
We're actually advertising for May 28th, 2025.
That's right. They did it so great, coming back again. But of course, if you missed Wendell in Winnipeg, you can just catch the interview that we did with him. So I'm not trying to remember how many weeks ago the show would have been.
Oh, that was
probably 2 months ago, 3 months ago at this point in time. You can go back to one of the older editions of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show on Saturday night, on the Saturday edition of the show, And we had Wendell on, and we had a great conversation with him for about 15 or so minutes. And then he came and spoke at the Rady dinner a couple weeks ago. So again, I will try and get that commercial fixed up for next Saturday. Time will tell if I'm successful or not.
I'm not going to be a spoiler alert here, Drew, but I will say there's been a lot. We already have over 60 votes in the poll. It is not neither in a landslide. Actually, one of the three selections is winning bigly.
Okay, bigly. Well, you'll give us the answers at the end of the show, so that we can tease that for the next hour and 20 minutes. What do you make of that Ehlers report and how that maybe impacts the Winnipeg Jets thinking at all? I mean, to me, again, like I said, not very well might be the case. That might be where his mindset is at on June the 8th or June the 7th or June the 6th, whenever the report came out. But you
maybe give folks some background here, Drew.
So there was a report from David Pagnotta of the Fourth Period, somebody who we've had on the program, not on this version, but on the old radio version of the show. And he reported that Ehlers and his representatives have indicated they have no interest in re-signing with the Winnipeg Jets a year plus from now when he becomes a free agent. So again, I don't have any reason to doubt the veracity of that report, but that's
Nikolai Ehlers signs a 6-year extension on July 1st.
Right. That's also something that we've heard ad nauseum about so many players around the NHL, and then lo and behold, look what happens. They re-sign contracts. So, you can say what you want, you can posture and you can strut like a peacock all you want, but brass tacks, it can be a little bit different when push comes to shove, as we saw with Scheifele and Hellebuyck, as I alluded to and as I mentioned off the start of the show. But nonetheless, let's humor it. Let's take the report at face value.
Sure.
What impact, if any, do you think that has on the Winnipeg Jets moving forward for the in their plans for the offseason?
And we should take note. Nikolai Ehlers' agent sent an email to the guys at to Camp Poitras for Jets at Noon, him and Jim Toe's show, just saying that Nikolai Ehlers is a member of the Jets, and he essentially said nothing, to be honest with you. But he didn't confirm anything. And again, we shouldn't be surprised by that. And a lot of this is posturing, guys. I mean, like I said, this could be the media gets used in a myriad number of ways. And that's always worth bearing in mind, is that, teams, you're like, oh, well, why is this guy breaking it? Well, the guy's breaking it because he's essentially a mouthpiece for a team. And
or an agent or a player or anything.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Like any number one of factors. But the fact is that, essentially these guys are, you get information only that's released because the team. It's not like let's put it this way. These guys aren't investigative journalists who are like snooping through garbage and hacking emails and talking to, the fifth person on the list and saying,
they're not Watergate reporters.
No. And so the reality is that the information that gets leaked or that gets reported is just information that either the team wants to get out or the agent wants to get out. So you can, if you want to be an insider, you can be, but essentially it's just an agreement to be manipulated because you're essentially just sharing information that a source wants you to get out. Now, some people like that because it gives them the opportunity to be the first person to report something, and that's their prerogative. But the fact of the matter is that that's essentially what you're doing. You're doing someone's bidding, essentially. Like they're using you, and sometimes people are willing to be used in that capacity, and that's their prerogative. But ultimately, like I said, whether it's true, whether it's the agent wanting to get this out there, it's kind of like what was it last year, Drew? It was something that made no sense. Who was it with? It was with Dubois, and it just made no sense why the information got out. You remember, there was when they went on Montreal radio and the agent was talking, and I just thought, what are you doing? You're just creating unnecessary problems, right? And so, but in his mind, he probably was thinking, I'm creating a solution to a problem by helping my client get the hell out of the situation he doesn't want to be in anymore. So, now getting to the question that you're asking about in terms of the veracity of, or not necessarily the veracity, because you're not asking about that, but you're asking about the idea.
Or just asking, like I said, I've had a number of conversations with people this week, associated, some associated, with the hockey community in Winnipeg, others associated just, generally fans or whatever. And they've all asked me, what do I think is going to happen with Ehlers? And so that, and what I've said to a lot of them is I think that Ehlers
Mm-hmm.
to some extent, and his future to some extent depends on Sean Monahan and what happens with Monahan. Because I don't think the Jets lose Monahan and trade Ehlers. I
Mm-hmm.
think that causes too much disruption in their top six. It leaves them too thin. You're too reliant on young players maybe coming into your lineup at that point in time. You're maybe too reliant on a veteran player playing an elevated role that he might not necessarily be suited for. That'd be mostly Vlad Nemesnikov in my mind there. So that I think that there, even though they don't play the same position, and most people don't necessarily put a lot of ties between Monahan and Ehlers together, but that I do think that there is a connectivity there. If the Jets re-sign Monahan, I think that they are a lot more comfortable making a trade involving Nikolai Ehlers. If they don't re-sign Monahan, or maybe or don't sign someone of his equivalent, let's say, I think that Nikolai Ehlers is still a member of the Winnipeg Jets come the start of training camp. And I wouldn't be surprised at all. It's not the Jets' MO to act proactively. When they made the trade for Trouba, their hand had basically been forced. Yes, they could have waited maybe another 6 months and done something at the trade deadline instead of before the draft that year, but everyone knew he was out. I don't know that, and that there was 0% chance of re-signing him. I don't feel that they're anywhere close to that yet with Nikolai Ehlers or anything like that, where it's a foregone conclusion that he's on his way out. If you're Ehlers and you're still here come September and in the start of the 24-25 season, and all of a sudden your usage is different than it has been really for a lot of your career here in Winnipeg, all of a sudden Scott Arniel is putting more trust in you and maybe is not as critical of you as Rick Bowness is. And I did think that at times Rick Bowness's criticisms of Nikolai Ehlers were that he was being singled out for his shortcomings more than other players with similar shortcomings. Maybe that doesn't happen anymore. Maybe Ehlers is a lot more comfortable with a guy like Scott Arniel. I don't believe for a second that the water is so dirty that he won't re-sign with the Winnipeg Jets if all of a sudden he feels he's in a more comfortable situation.
I'm just trying to figure out what dirty water has to do with Nikolai Ehlers wanting to re-sign.
Well, you don't want to swim in dirty water, so it's just using.
I mean, Drew, the Red River
analogy, Dave. I'm torturing an analogy.
The Red River is literally translated as muddy waters.
That's
for
the
God's sake.
Assiniboine.
Oh, the Assiniboine. Well, still same difference. Muddy waters. So dirty water is a Manitoba staple, Drew.
But there's a difference between dirty water and muddy water. I would argue muddy water is not dirty, whereas dirty water can be contaminated with things that actually like when the river, I think it was in Cleveland, the river in Cleveland was so polluted it actually caught on fire. I think that was in the 50s or something. It had just been laden with
you were a
oil.
young man at just 20 years old at that
That's
point.
right. I remember it vividly. Back then I was doing my road trip through the United States in my early 20s, and I came across Cleveland, and it was on fire. It might not have been Cleveland, but whatever the city is, I apologize to our friends in Ohio if it wasn't Cleveland. But that's my point, is that I don't believe that whatever animus exists, if there is animus between Ehlers and the Jets, can't be resolved.
Yeah, I would say there's no animus. And the one thing I will say, and I'm not trying, I listened to Ehlers. I mean, I will admit this. Ehlers just did an interview on Danish TV, which ran about 40 minutes. Now, me and Google Translate we're listening.
Did you say he did a 40-minute interview on Danish TV?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was again, like I said, I'm not fully conversant on what's going on in Denmark in terms of their television programming, but he was on. I linked it if folks were interested. I did suggest you bring Google Translate along with you to listen, although Google Translate did struggle with some of the Danish. It was capable of doing it. And, I mean, look, I do think that some things with Nikolai Ehlers, he didn't give a resounding, I want to be here. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not even certain he understood the question, the way it was phrased. Okay. Just based on his answer, I was like, I'm not so certain he's getting the translation. I think something's getting a little lost in translation. And look, Nikolai Ehlers has been here a long time, but English isn't his first language. Now he does speak. I think I saw he spoke like 5 or 6 different languages, but English isn't his first one. And so, and I'm not saying he's not capable of speaking. We've all heard him do interviews and stuff like that, but stuff sometimes does get mixed, I would suggest. So I don't think he didn't give a resounding answer because he doesn't want to be back in Winnipeg. And he does, often we've heard when they do polls on the players, who's the wimpiest in terms of the weather and that sort of thing. And he was asked about, walking a dog in minus 30, although
he's
we
got
got
a
very
dog.
many.
I see him he lives not far from me, and I see him walking his dog all the time, even in the depths of winter.
Now, here's the question, Drew. Since you don't wave at Murat, I'm assuming you don't wave at Nikolai Ehlers.
I don't have first of all, I hug Murat now. You're right. I don't wave at Murat. I hug Murat now. I don't. No, I let Nikolai Ehlers do his thing and walk his dog and get back inside as quickly as he wants to. For the record, it was 1969, and it was the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland, so I did get that right.
Good. You got the city right. And Ronnie's Danish, so Ronnie's going to go watch that interview for us and then get at the pertinent parts. The only thing I got away from it was that he's not very good at beer pong. That would be the extent of what I understood from said interview. But and the one thing also that he said is, look, he hears this stuff. He hears this stuff on social media, but he tries to stay away from it and not let it affect him. And Drew, like I said, I don't think any of this stuff is irreparable. I don't think you're right. I think if he gets a good role with Scott Arniel and he's got the chemistry with let's say Sean Monahan, who is potentially brought back, and Cole Perfetti, that those three can't form chemistry, or maybe put him with Mark Scheifele, who we've talked about for a long time, and see if those two can work together. I mean, the biggest question mark for this Jets club in terms of getting over the hump, in terms of trying to become a Stanley Cup contender. Everyone sees this Jets team as a playoff team next year. I don't think that folks aren't. I don't think
the right side, not with the current right side of the defense, I would be hesitant about.
Well, okay, but I'm just saying that. Well, I mean, again, obviously the big unknown is Dylan DeMello, of course,
right.
but I would say that they're most likely a playoff team next year.
But the question becomes, yes.
But so then the question becomes, are you dealing Ehlers? What are you dealing Ehlers for? Right? Are you able to deal him for that top pairing? Right? I mean, again, one of the things we're hearing a lot of is picks. Is a first round pick. Oh, Buffalo's offering their 11th overall pick. They want a top 6 forward. Well, from a Jets perspective, again, what does a pick get you?
Well,
it'll get you a very good.
I don't think Buffalo's actually offering that, because I would probably do that.
Well,
I would probably do that.
Well,
I know that.
Okay.
I know that.
Hold on.
So in the win now mode, though.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So then what does that say to the, again, you signed Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck to those extensions with the intention of being a team that's going for the Stanley Cup. You cannot deal from that position. The only way you can deal Nikolai Ehlers, in my mind, is to augment your strength defensively. If you're not doing it, you can't make that trade.
Yeah, I would agree. I have no problem with that comment. I agree. I mean, it's obviously the Jets' priority is win now. I mean, everybody's priority is win now, but with the way the Jets roster is currently built, with the number of players that they have, veteran players that they have signed to longer term contracts, Scheifele, Morrissey. I mean, Connor's got 2 years left, but Hellebuck, of course, you're right. They're looking to find a way to get beyond 5 games in the first round. I mean, that's the ceiling. That has been the ceiling right now for the last 2 years.
2 years.
Is 5 games in the first round, and you go out as meekly as humanly possible. The gentleman's sweep, as they like to call it. So how do the Jets get beyond that? Well, where the holes in the roster are. That's pretty clear. We've seen them exposed time and time again. So just trotting back the same thing doesn't necessarily work. But at the same time, the Jets also can't be in a position where they're satisfied taking a step back, because a step back from losing in the first round in 5 games is not being a playoff team. And then that causes way more. Then that leads to a lot more questions and a fair bit more chaos, obviously, for the entire organization. They expect to be a playoff team year in and year out. And recent history it has been, with the exception of that the one season a few years ago where where Maurice quit, and of course the Dave Lowry experiment and all that jazz.
Mm-hmm.
This has been at least a playoff team, not necessarily a playoff team that succeeds especially well. They've lost in, they won the series against Edmonton. So yes, I keep forgetting about that, but they did win it because it was such a weird time frame. But other than that, when you talk about quote unquote regular seasons, where there's been fans in the building and things of that nature, you lost to St. Louis in 6. You lost to the Golden Knights in 5, and you lost to the Avalanche in 5. So how do you get better? And that's where the team needs to be the off-season priority, is finding the answer to that. How do you get better? How do you win that first round? How do you become competitive in that second round? Because the competition gets better and better, and the Jets haven't been up to task as of late. And that's what I think it was Josh Morrissey who said in the end of season. We all need to go back and we need to find a way to improve by 5%, 10%, 15%. Internal improvement of the players who are going to be here game in and game out, the ones who are under contract, the ones who are clearly not going anywhere in the offseason. How do those guys find a way to get that much better so that the team itself gets that much better as well?
Well,
it's just a bit of a soliloquy, admittedly, there, Dave. But that's the offseason mantra for this Winnipeg Jets organization, is to find a way to find an answer to that question. And it's not an easy answer necessarily. Does Josh Morrissey have 10% more to improve? Josh Morrissey's a pretty damn good player. I'd be surprised if there's 10% more there. And that's not an insult. It's just he seems like he's playing at almost the peak of his abilities at this stage of his career. He's not getting any younger. So does Josh Morrissey have 10% more? And if so, where does it come from? And that's true for a lot of these guys. And that's, I think, sort of the chicken and the egg argument the Jets have, is that they don't have a team laden with the biggest superstars in the league, like Colorado does with McKinnon, or like Edmonton does with McDavid and Draisaitl, and some of the guys on Florida as well. So how do they keep finding that incremental improvement? And that's the question that the Jets are going to have to deal with. I can see backstage that Jamie Thomas is queued up and getting ready to join us. So let's go to break. When we come back, Jamie Thomas, JT himself, going to join us for more Jets talk. It's Saturday morning. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whitened my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
It's all over, folks, and the run has come to an end.
You'll be so far away.
A Canadian team hasn't won the Cup in over 30 years.
And the Cup will stay south of the border.
Maybe it's time we try something different. This playoff season, let's cheer with the fans we've always cheered against. Team up for the Cup at Boston Pizza.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake after a great game or great deal. It shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at ZappiaGroup.com.
Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, And we are pleased to welcome to the program our very good friend, Jamie Thomas, Winnipeg Jets team reporter, good friend of ours. We are thrilled to have him back on the program with us on this Saturday morning. JT, how are things?
My lighting's terrible now that I look at it. I was
you're a little dark. It's okay.
So, well, I took this opportunity to use my son's room to see how clean it is today, and it is disgusting in here. He's at work, and I'm looking around. I'm like, whoa. So, teenage boys, you got to look forward to that eventually.
Yeah, I hope that just as long as you're not using black light, I think you'll be fine.
My wife won't come in here, so I don't.
Just light a match on your way out. Just after the interview's done, just turn around, light a match, walk out, and call it even.
Yeah, just use whatever to clean it up. I don't know, whatever. What's fun? We'll find something.
There you go. It's a hazmat. You do the show in a hazmat suit.
I'll just get one of those beekeeper outfits and come in.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll
be at Rumors next week.
Yeah, there you go. You can come join us there at Rumors next week. We'll always have you. It's funny, my son's only 6, so I mean, he's not at that point in time, mercifully. But I went into his room the other day, like to wake him up in the morning, and he's like, "Dad, don't open my closet." I'm like, "Oh God Almighty!"
Maybe you don't want to hear it any time in your life.
Never.
What do you got hidden in there? That's the question. You don't even ask that next question because you just don't want to know the answer.
He had so I opened it after.
You had to.
And he had a stick in a cup of water. And so I'm like, what the hell is this stick doing in a cup of water? So he came home after school. I said, buddy, why do you have a stick in a cup of water? And he's like, I wanted to see if the stick would get sharper if I put it in water. I'm like,
science. See,
yeah.
He's chemistry expert already. Keep working on that. Keep experimenting, son.
I'm like, I don't know why.
You might be in the 101 version of science class, though, Jamie, not the 100s.
Yeah. The next level below, or whatever you want to say. Yeah. You have to give him creativity things. So you have to give him marks for creativity and participation.
Fair enough.
He was very eager about it. So I'll give him full marks for the eagerness as well.
Well, you have to tell us after the show if his stick is sharper.
And I'm such a sucker that the stick is still sitting in the cup of water because you
can't ruin it.
Well, Drew, what you should be doing every night is sharpening it slightly to really put your thumb on the scale.
It's a miracle.
You've created magic, my son. You've created science.
Sell this, and it's just water. We have it from the tap. We can make millions off this.
Everyone needs sharp sticks at all times. Well, it is
Winnipeg,
totally.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ed.
Yeah.
It's not going there. Okay, back to the show. Jamie, nice to see you on this Saturday morning. Jets, off season continues. Really been a bit of a quiet week, but at the same time, that's usually calm before the storm. From your perspective, what do you think sort of priority number one is for the Winnipeg Jets now that they've resolved the coaching situation?
Well, I think clearly Scott Arniel's got to bring in his assistants too, right? What is that going to look like? And obviously, from his media availability, talked about all the candidates that are out there. And I really liked how he brought into the fact that there are guys out there that I didn't really know about. And, now that's great. When you open up your options like that can only benefit. So maybe not this time. These new candidates won't be hired, but maybe down the road you have these opportunities for these new coaches, these new voices to come in. And I think certainly now you have to decide, if you're the Jets and Kevin Cheveldayoff, are you going to look for a first round pick in this draft? And from what I'm hearing, talking to a lot of draft experts, there's not a lot, it kind of drops off after number 16. So if you're not in the top half of the draft, is it worth giving up, say, and I'm only saying this theoretically, Nikolai Ehlers for a first round pick, and it's in the bottom half because it's a guy, to me, you're in win now mode. So is this kid that you're drafting in the first round going to help you win now? Obviously not. So unless you're in the top 10. So that's where you kind of have to decide. And I spoke with Mark Hilliard 2 days ago, and clearly they're just, they're moving on like they don't have a first round pick, but clearly they are keeping the eyes on the first round talent. And there's probably an opportunity with having Montreal's pick in the top half of the second round that maybe somebody from the first round talent drops into the second round. So that's kind of where you're looking at. And then you have to look at what your depth chart is as well. So is Cole Perfetti, and I like using him as the best example of an opportunity with the new coaching staff. Is Cole Perfetti, or does he have to be in your top 6? And to me, he does have to be. So how does that look? How do you make that work? Clearly, Cole Perfetti is most effective when he plays in the top 6. That's his talent. That's his hockey IQ. He's got to work on his speed, obviously, and I thought he did a great job handling his first full season in the NHL. But now you have a new coach. Rick Bowness is clearly, his job was to win the Stanley Cup, and whatever he felt the best players were available to him, that's who he's going to use. Cole Perfetti wasn't in that conversation. Now, does it change with Scott Arniel? And you look back at that run when Rick stepped away to be with Judy. Cole had a good run. I know the entire team did, for that matter, but I think Perfetti had 14 points in the 15 games that Arniel coached. Now, of course, that could be coincidental. Maybe it's not. But I think that Scott Arniel is going to give Cole Perfetti every opportunity to show that he can handle top 6 minutes on a night-to-night basis and become more consistent in that category. And I think that he does have the abilities, the skills to do that. It's just, can he do it night over night and not have the lulls that he had last year, which we can totally understand because it's been a while since he played a full season due to injuries. So Cole Perfetti has the capabilities, he has the skills to do it. Just, can he do it over long stretches of time in a full season in the National Hockey League?
Jamie, one of the things that folks are trying to count on, and one of the things we're not certain, is the young stars, the young guys. Are they going to make that jump from the Manitoba Moose to the NHL and play with the Jets? Obviously, the guy we're focused on is Brad Lambert. The question I have for you is usage, because we've seen this before. And I use Jack Roslovic as a perfect example, because Jack Roslovic dominated the AHL as a center. Plays his last 10 games with the Moose on the wing, which at the time I remember thinking, oh, that's curious. Why is he on the wing all of a sudden? And then, of course, gets called up to the Jets and he's playing as a winger. The problem for the Jets right now is that Brad Lambert spent the entirety of last season as a center. And they're developing. We know that he played center in Seattle. We know he prefers to play center. Mark Morrison, when I spoke with him, talked about the things he learned defensively. We know offensively what Brad Lambert can do. We've seen the speed. We see the shot. But defensively is where the coach and Zinger, when I talked to him at our Moose end of season media availability, talked about how good these guys were developing defensively and picking up that element of the game. But my question to you is, of course, and again, this is the big, it's a big unknown. It's hypothetical because we don't know what's going to happen with Sean Monahan.
Exactly. He's a big X factor here. Yeah.
We don't know what's going to happen with Nikolai Ehlers. But assuming one or two of those guys isn't there, you see a spot for a Brad Lambert. And again, what he does during training camp is going to be integral. But even if, let's say it's Nikolai Ehlers, do you see the Jets saying, okay, we'll give Brad Lambert a shot as a winger? Or, again, with Sean Monahan, if he decides to sign elsewhere?
Yeah, I think, Dave, the Jets organization and Moose, of course, made sure that they want to continue developing Brad Lambert as a center. So I think clearly if there's an opening for him to come in, and it means being on the wing, I'm sure he would not say no.
Exactly.
But I think the Jets have spent the time, the Moose, of course, making sure he gets better defensively as a centerman. I think that plays a large role in it. And I mean, we all know they'd be crazy not to give Brad Lambert an opportunity when training camp opens. But again, if Sean Monahan is there, you're set up the middle. And what does that mean? If Nikolai Ehlers moves? But that, of course, pushes Cole Perfetti into the second line. So I would love to see Brad Lambert get lots of looks in the preseason. We all hate the preseason, but it's a great opportunity to see if these guys are ready for that opportunity. And I give Brad Lambert 100% props here because he took the time and understood the opportunity in front of him, that he had to become better in his own end of the ice, and he did that. He got better as the year went along, and we all know why the Moose struggled so long at the beginning part of the season. You have 4 young centermen developing there, and that's extremely challenging at the American Hockey League level to win without, good veteran centermen. And the Jets understand they're developing. That's the whole process, obviously, with the Manitoba Moose. But they got better as the year went along, and you saw that with the results at the last part of the year. Of course, goaltending got a lot better as the year went along as well for the Moose, but that's because of the commitment to the defensive end of the ice by these young centermen, including Brad Lambert. So I think Brad Lambert's going to get every opportunity to show that what he's learned. It sure was exciting to watch him in that first game in the final game of the regular season. I'm sure Jets fans were thrilled to see it happen, but I like to caution people that was a glorified preseason game to close out the year. So I think we have to temper our expectations. I was just as excited as anybody when Brad Lambert got his first point, and of course Nikita Chibrikov scoring the game-winning goal. Like that is drama at its finest in a regular season finale. But we have to be very cautious. That just shows development. Now, can they do it over a long stretch of time, just like we just talked about Cole Perfetti? That's the big question. But it sure is exciting to see how great those two players and how much they developed as the year went along at the American Hockey League level, and of course the showcase at the final NHL game for the Jets.
Jamie Thomas, our guest Saturday morning. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Jamie, of course, is the Winnipeg Jets team reporter. Jamie, we haven't spoken since the Scott Arniel was hired.
Yeah,
and a big part of the conversation was a big part of the appeal for Scott Arniel getting the job is the continuity factor from continuing to build upon the structure that Rick Bowness put in place.
Mm-hmm.
But that said, from your perspective, what do you expect to see a little bit different from Scott Arniel than from what Rick Bowness did? There obviously, there's connectivity there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they are their own, Scott Arniel's his own man and will, put in his own, will do things slightly different than Rick Bowness did in various areas. So what are you sort of looking for to watch for, in Scott Arniel's approach to being the head coach?
So I think to me, the biggest thing was keeping Scott Arniel or hiring Scott Arniel because of what you just said, continuity. Mm-hmm. It's a little crazy to have a team that won 52 games, 110 points to make a massive change. And I understand there's a lot of sexy names out there, but the players, from the most part that I've heard, I haven't talked to everybody, and I've read and listened to a lot of people like Scott Arniel. So it'll be a little silly to move on from him, especially the system when executed properly worked. Mm-hmm. So now what I'm waiting to see is with the assistants that come in, whether it's an associate or not, we're looking at changes. You're going to have a new defensive coach, a new penalty kill coach, a new power play coach. What is the change on the power play? Because the power play didn't work. So that's where I would have to see change. So that to me is the biggest thing for the Jets. And obviously there was a massive drop off in the penalty kill department as well as they defended at 5-on-5. That same defensive structure, not structure, but that tightness in your own end disappeared a little bit with the penalty kill. And there was a lot of games, and it's crazy to think when you win 52 games, you can think of probably about 4 or 5 that they could have won,
right,
had the power play or penalty kill came through. So to me, the biggest change, or what I would like to see, is how are you going to improve the power play? Are you going to be able to get through to everybody what you want to get done and what has to be done for the power play to get done? How many times we hear Rick Bowness say the puck has to move? We became too stationary, and we saw it over and over and over again. So is the new coach going to be able to have to get through to guys to move the puck quickly? Because we're seeing some pretty two dynamic power plays in Stanley Cup final, guys, and it's about how fast that puck moves. And I know it's unfair to compare any power play to the Edmonton Oilers power play, but the Florida Panthers do a heck of a job moving it too. The Rangers do a heck of a job moving the puck. Dallas, for that matter. It moves at all times. The penalty kill cannot set up or get set because the puck is moving so quickly. And of course, you're not going to have Connor McDavid cutting through 4 guys. Yeah, dipsy doodling around Miro Heiskanen like he's a peewee hockey player. But still, the important part to me is shots on goal and moving the puck. And the only way you can get shots through is when you have the penalty kill moving around quickly and they can't get set to block shots. So that to me is going to be the big key for Scott Arniel and his 2 new members of his coaching staff heading into this new season.
Well, Jamie, jumping off of power play, because a guy who became something of a power play specialist, how important do you think this season is going to be for Gabriel Vilardi? I mean, he to me is probably going to be the biggest linchpin. Of course, there's so much uncertainty at this point of the season.
Yeah.
Things can look so much different in a few months. But just from your perspective, being around the team as much as you are, just how big a role do you think Gabriel Vilardi, if healthy, can play on getting this Jets team to that next level?
Man, I feel bad for the first person to ask him about his health because he's just such a, you know what's coming.
It won't be me. Yeah. It won't be me. I'm gonna be like Kelly Moore. This is your chance. Go ahead.
Mike McIntyre, please do, and I'll just go like this.
Yeah, I'll be like this. Yeah, just trying to Mike. The Jets and IC mics will be beside each other. We'll be shielding our eyes.
That's
go
right.
ahead.
You're just like, please let this explosion happen. I can understand why Gabriel's frustrated with the line of questioning, but now, there's a whole bunch of examples in front of you. He's had and it's not his fault that Blake Lizotte fell on his leg intentionally for one of the fourth games of the year. It's not his fault that he got hurt. He had the issues a little bit later on. And of course, his health issues, that's not on him. But a healthy Gabriel Vilardi means a lot to this power play because he's so good at taking away the goaltender's eyes. He's so good at that bumper position. When he's healthy, we just saw the capabilities of the Jets power play. And we should also, and I'm crazy that I didn't bring it up the last time, as a healthy Kyle Connor. You can't tell me this season would have went a lot smoother if Kyle Connor, who was scoring at a pretty good pace before his injury, what this would have looked like for the Jets as the year went along. So I think further removed from that knee injury, Kyle Connor's going to have a better year. Maybe he's more, of course, I'm speaking for him. Maybe there's more confidence in the knee. Maybe we're going to see more of that cutting around inside and out, more, explosiveness, because there's going to be more confidence in the knee, and he's further removed from that injury. So I think Gabriel Vilardi and Kyle Connor play a large role in what the Jets power play will look like. But Vilardi is such a big deal for this hockey club. The trade was made specifically around him being that player in that bumper position on the power play, and of course being on the number one line as well. So he kind of was, he had a great first game like all the Jets did, but was kind of invisible the rest of the series against Colorado Avalanche. So a fully healthy, long stretch of time, Gabriel Vilardi will be a big addition for the Winnipeg Jets, 5-on-5, and certainly on the power play.
Jamie, just want to follow up.
Yeah.
We're talking about Sean Monahan, whether they'll re-sign him. We're talking about, Brad Lambert potentially playing center role. We've talked about Cole Perfetti. Potentially, if you don't have Lambert, if he remains with the Moose, then maybe Cole Perfetti plays in that center position. What about Gabriel Vilardi at center? Now, I know it didn't work for him, but when we talk to him, he sure seems to be interested in playing center. Now, I know he didn't play that role on this team, but Gabriel Vilardi at center, do we have any thoughts in that regard?
Yeah, like if you don't sign Sean Monahan and you can't find him certainly in the free agent market, and Brad Lambert isn't the right option for you, number two as well, let's be serious here. It's a big jump, American Hockey League to the National Hockey League. There's a much bigger centerman than Brad Lambert in the NHL. So that's the best part about how the Jets have drafted, how they have traded, the players they have acquired. They have the ability to play center. They have the ability to play the wing. But if you have a guy that is interested of the stature of Gabriel Vilardi, and you can't sign Sean Monahan, and again, Brad Lambert's not the right option for you night over night, you have Gabe Vilardi right there wanting to do so. So I can't see why you wouldn't take that opportunity. It also helps you out a little bit more in your top six, gives you more flexibility. So I like the idea. I really do, because of his size. First off, he'd be able to handle a lot of the bigger centermen. Leon Draisaitl's a unicorn in itself, but at least he has the ability of size and strength to be able to go up against Draisaitl and many other big centermen in the league. But it's a great option to have. So you have that. Why wouldn't you use it? But I'm sure hoping somehow, some way, the Jets are able to bring Sean Monahan back, because I know it didn't work out so much in the playoffs, but it sure settled things down for the Jets in their top six, having a guy like Monahan who can win faceoffs, who can kill penalties, and is a great part also in the bumper position on the power play as well.
To that thought, though, Jamie,
does
that mean that you talk about the size and the physicality necessary to sort of play that center role? Cole Perfetti, Get now did start. It was a brief, but he did start last year at center. And then that experiment quickly went by the wayside. So are we assuming that Cole Perfetti's future is as a winger rather than a center?
Yeah, I would have to say so. Because of how competitive the Western Conference will be, and certainly the Central Division, I don't know if you have that time frame to go, we're going to run Cole back at center. because wins become so important clearly with the competitive let's not kid ourselves. Utah's gonna be a heck of a lot better next year with all that cap space they have to work with, and an actual owner is going to spend money. They're getting bad. Chicago's going to be a little bit better. Nashville's going to take another step forward, and I don't think there's no way St. Louis is as bad as they were last year either. So it is a hyper competitive Central Division already, and the Western Conference itself. So you heard Scott Arniel say we've got to get to that top. We got to fight off 8 other teams to get back into the playoffs in the first place. So do you have that window to go? We're going to try Cole Perfetti at center, the experiment to see if it works, and do you have the ability? Maybe if you get a little bit of a winning streak to start off the season, do you try it a little bit longer? But the point is, and what you guys have brought up and with your question is, the Jets have options if Sean Monahan doesn't end up signing here. The sky is not falling if Sean Monahan decides to sign somewhere else, because the Jets do have options within the organization already.
So moving to the back end, sorry, Dave, moving to the back end, Jamie, the question marks there are obvious. The 2 Dillons, DeMelo, Brandon Dillon. From where you're sitting today, we're 3 weeks, 3 weeks plus a couple days away from free agency.
Mm-hmm.
One resigns, both resign, neither resign. If you had to put on that, that prognostication hat that that I've seen you wear before,
the Dillon and Dillon law firm,
exactly.
If I had to say right now, and then this is purely spitballing, I feel like Dylan DeMelo's probably certain to sign, in my opinion, and then Brandon Dillon's more of a guessing. It's a 50-50 to me on that one, and that's not having conversation. I have not talked to either player. I have not been talking to anybody, but yeah, exactly. It's just like, I just feel like, where else is Dylan DeMelo going to pair with somebody like Josh Morrissey in your top pairing? First penalty kill, like the opportunities in front of Dylan DeMelo here. He knows the team, he knows the structure. He likes Scott Arniel. He's been here a significant amount of time. So I feel there's comfortability there. I feel the organization respects what he does on a nightly basis. Brandon Dillon to me is like, there's still options out there for him. But I feel like there's a top 4 defenseman role here. Where else are you going to get that? And I don't know. I mean, you look around the league. I haven't looked around everywhere who's going to be short in defensemen, because we all know defensemen with the ability to exert himself physically. That's the other part with Brandon Dillon. What do you have to replace him if he doesn't re-sign here? You're limited in guys that can drop the gloves when they have to if he leaves. I know Logan Stanley is still an option, but that's not something Logan Stanley likes to do. Brandon Dillon's more willing to do it. There's nobody really coming up that can do that on a nightly basis. So I think it's not integral, but kind of
Jamie, important. I don't know if I'd say that with Tyrell Bauer in the organization.
Yeah, I know.
He may rearrange your face for saying something like that.
Well, I'm hoping the fact that we're both from Cochrane will save me on this one. But and we both had McKay's ice cream. But clearly,
hang on. Tell me more about this ice cream. Focus on the ice cream now.
Yeah. McKay's Ice Cream, a place I went when we first moved to Cochrane, and then went back maybe 2 more times after that. But man, there were people going there in droves. When you live someplace and someone tells you there's this place in town that like everyone talks about, but you never go to it. It's McKay's Ice Cream, because the lineups were too long. So I'm like, as a Cochrane kid, I'm like, I'm not lining up. I'm from Cochrane. I don't have to line up for ice cream. I have it right here. As we go off topic, and thank you for saving my life, Ty. I hope if you're listening, I apologize.
He just burst through the door behind you and started pummeling you.
You got to be careful though, Jamie, because him and Matt Rempe are going to be training together. And now when they're training, they're going to have a picture of you there. He's going to be like, Jamie Thomas. He doubted me.
I also called him Tyler when I had him on the podcast too. So there's a whole bunch of things that I'm giving Tyrell Bauer to work with here. So, so like on a consistent basis, I mean, it's a big loss if Brandon Dillon decides to sign somewhere else. And on top of that, character guy in the dressing room, you can't tell me that it wouldn't be missed either. So, but I still feel there's a good, strong chance Dylan DeMelo's here. I'm 50-50 with Brandon Dillon leaving the organization.
The other position, there's a big question mark now, because the expectation is that Laurent Brossoit has played his last game for the Winnipeg Jets. He'll be most likely getting his chance to be a starter, or at least in a more serious tandem somewhere else in the NHL. So Thomas Milic, the 2023 5th rounder, was phenomenal last year when he came up from the ECHL. really steadying the ship for the Manitoba Moose and, in his first year as a professional hockey league player. But the reality is that he's going to need more seasoning. So from a Jets perspective, there is going to be a hole in terms of goaltending. And so, the question for Jets fans, if you're not going to, the Jets, the one thing with Connor Hellebuck, we were thinking, Jamie, was that they were going to give Laurent Brossoit more starts. Well, we know that Laurent Brossoit didn't get more starts, didn't get enough to get that 25, wasn't on the Jennings Award. So I guess from a goaltending perspective, how big a need is it really? Because you have this expectation that Connor Hellebuck is going to play at least, 65 games in the regular season, because if they're not trusting Brossoit with the way he was playing, I don't imagine if you're going to get another goaltender. And I haven't really looked at the goaltending market that they're going to give someone a significant jump over the 22 he played.
Yeah. I don't see if Laurent Brossoit can't get a 25 guys, I don't really know if there's any other outside of, the tandem in Boston. If Linus Ullmark ends up leaving there, but he's not coming here. Linus Ullmark would probably want to go somewhere where he's going to start, much like Laurent Brossoit. I think we're pretty much walking back into 70 games for Connor Hellebuck. And I mean, he has shown that he can play that many. It doesn't really, I don't think we can look at it as he's too tired when it comes to the playoffs, because I feel like that guy could probably play 80 and be fine. I just don't know if there's any other goaltenders in the market, and the free agent market, where you could say, okay, we're going to trust you with 25 starts. I don't know about that. And here's another thing. The Jets had probably the best schedules in terms of lack of back-to-backs and that's probably why Laurent Brossoit didn't get to 25. So I think it was 9 back-to-backs last year, which is unheard of since I've been here. I don't think they're going to get that type of schedule again, but I mean, I'm not a schedule expert, but it just feels like, okay, you've had your 1 year of schedule bonanza. You're back to 12, 13 back-to-backs here coming up. And there is that, of course, that tournament coming, the Four Nations tournament coming up next season. So how does that affect me? I know it's supposed to go over it's in February, I believe. So how does that affect things? So I don't know. I think we're looking at Connor Hellebuck going back to 70 games, around there, 68, 70, because I don't see any other goaltender out there where you're like, you trust them enough to play that many games. And again, going back to my original point, the West is crazy, guys. It is you're going to need 2 points a lot of nights. And the Jets dominated the East last year. Will they dominate the East again this year like they did last year? That plays a large role in what the backup goaltender is going to be and how many games they're going to play.
Yeah, Jamie, we were talking about this earlier. I mean, you look at the roster for the Jets, and there's obviously some pieces that won't be the same next year as they were this year, but by and large, it's going to be a pretty similar roster. And then Josh Morrissey, I think it was Morrissey in the in the end of season media availability, talked about how the team and the players on the team currently need to get 5%, 10%, 15% better in the offseason. Who do you see having more room to grow, that have really established themselves already on this roster? I mean, obviously you point to some of the young guys and you point to health. From Velarde or, Perfetti continuing to move up. But like a guy, it's guys like, I thought Morrissey's comment, like, do you see Morrissey having 10% more to still grow, or Scheifele or Connor or some of these really established guys that they still have, additional room to raise their ceiling moving forward?
Yeah, I think Josh Morrissey pretty much put the onus on himself, right? I think I could see why he wanted to get better because of how dominant Cale Makar was in that opening round series. You're watching going, now, does he have that stature yet? No, but Josh Morrissey, I think, still has more in his offensive game. And that also ties into the success of the power play. Like Josh Morrissey gets, 5 to 10 more points in the power play. We're talking about him in the Norris conversation again. So a lot of that success for Josh Morrissey in terms of points and the conversation of Norris Trophy comes from the Jets being better on the power play next season. So I think he has a place to go. Talk about Kyle Connor. You can't tell me he won't be better this year, because he's going to be, I believe, fully healthy. Gabe Velarde has another step to go. What does Rasmus Kupari have? That's another, like, we didn't even talk about him in terms of the ability, another center in the organization. So we saw the great speed. We saw stretches, got hurt. So that maybe kind of sidelined his development this year. So That's another guy I think can get a little bit better as well. I will leave the third line alone because there's not much more you can ask from them, and I don't see the ceiling getting higher for those guys. But where does Billy Heinola fit in this, guys? It looked like he was he was going to make the opening night roster, hands down. How does he fit into this conversation? And again, this is just me guessing. Neil Pionk has a big step to go this year, and I think the loss of a friend mentally hurt him more than we probably know. That's a tough way to lose a friend, somebody close to you, and not have that bother you for a year. I think we've seen peak Neil Pionk. I think there's another place he can go, and that's a guy that has consistently said, at least the last 2 years, I have to look in the mirror. I can be better, and I think Neil Pionk can be better in 24-25.
Well, Jamie, we know Drew can be better. There's no question about it. Drew needs to elevate his 45% for the record. We need him to go up at least 15, maybe 20%.
Like, it's obvious. Like, it's the sky blue. It's
the weak link. It's
be better, Drew.
Dave carries me like nobody. There's a reason Dave's back is in traction. Just carries me left, right, and center all the time. The only thing weaker than me is Jamie's fantasy football team.
Oh.
It's the reason why I got rid of 5 teams so I could be better this year, because there's just too much attention going elsewhere.
Well, Jamie, you were in like 400 leagues this year, weren't you?
I was in 7 fantasy football, 1 hockey, and 1 baseball.
Wow.
I got rid of 5 fantasy football. My wife was going to divorce me.
Yeah.
She's like, every time a draft comes around, I've never seen somebody, because I'm 53. She's like, how old are you? And that same conversation comes up. And she's like, it's fantasy. I'm like, exactly. I like to leave the real world for a bit, believe that I have a say. I have my fantasy football team is the only place where my decisions matter. I can just tell myself, I'm making this trade without having to ask somebody permission to do it.
Look, Jamie, just say to her, look, sweetie, if you want to help me with those fantasies instead, then it won't be any problems at all. You'll give up the football thing.
Dude, this is a family show.
The worst part is my son comes in, never played fantasy football before, finishes first 3 years in a row, wins 2 championships, and I finished last 2 of the 3 years. It is the ultimate humiliation in your life. Even in your fantasy world, you're not winning. So I don't know what else to tell you guys. Looking forward to next year.
I'm getting reports that the CSI team is at your front door, ready to inspect your son's room. So maybe we'll leave it on that front. I think
Thank you very much. Yes.
We've gone down the rabbit hole sufficiently. We got our fantasy football talk in.
Yeah.
The draft will be soon. You got to let me know when that is. We're looking forward
to
it. Jamie Thomas, Winnipeg Jets team reporter, great friend of ours. It's always a pleasure, my friend.
See you guys.
Thank
Jamie.
you.
Say hi to everyone. We'll do it again real soon, Jamie. There he goes, Jamie Thomas. Great guy. That was a fun interview. We had a good time talking to Jamie about everything going on with the Winnipeg Jets and all the other nonsense that we come up with. Let's take our final commercial break, Dave. When we come back, more Jets talk, more you'll update us on what's going on the poll, of course. As for the rooting interest in the Stanley Cup final, which allegedly gets underway later today, much more to come. Illegal Curve Hockey Show. It's going to roll on this Saturday morning. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk with you on this Saturday morning. Great interview with our friend Jamie Thomas. Always great to catch up with him. Dave, before we move on in the show, we want to make mention of a passing of a member of the True North organization. And I don't know Richard. I never met Richard, but you had the pleasure to know Richard. So I thought maybe it would be appropriate. I know I'm just sort of springing this on you, but I know that you're adept at this. Maybe tell our audience about Richard and what he did for True North, and sort of what you knew about him in your time spent with him.
Yeah, I was going to say this to the end of the show. I was going to maybe end the show with a kind of a testimonial to Richard Bowie, who was a member of the Manitoba Moose organization. He was hired, used to work at the University of Carleton. He was the video coach for the Manitoba Moose. Just a great guy. You know, I mean, obviously I don't work for the team, but I get to know a lot of the guys who work for the Moose because I'm there quite a bit. And Richard was a guy who just always had a quick smile, loved to chat. You know, it was great to catch up with him in the press box and have conversations with him, you know, over the years. And just a really good person, really happy. Always had it, like I said, always had a smile on his face, real quick-witted. So it was, you know, I like that because he was had a bit of a sarcastic edge, which I kind of enjoyed. And so just, you know, a really nice guy. And he knew the players really respected him. The organization loved him. And so, yeah, I got the news the other day that he had passed away, and he had dealt with cancer before in his life, and he had beaten it, which was awesome. And then he actually moved home to support his mom, who was sick. And so he left the Moose, unfortunately, which, you know, was his dream job, working for the Manitoba Moose. And then when he came back, he had gotten sick again himself. And so, you know, he was dealing with health issues again, unfortunately. And and you know, we've communicated throughout the years, even after he hasn't been with the Moose for 2 years now, and we would still communicate. And like I said on Twitter the other day, his last message to me in February was congratulating us on our 15th anniversary and the success we've had on this show, and specifically how much coverage we provide for the Manitoba Moose. He always appreciated that. And so, you know, just the world's a worse place. And it's unfortunate, you know, when a guy like that, who's just a good person and a guy that I've never heard anybody say a bad word about, unlike you and like me, you know, people just treated him with a lot of respect, and because he treated people with respect, and it didn't matter who you were. Richard always had time for everyone. So yeah, sad to find out the news, because I was hopeful he, you know, would maybe eventually, if his mom got better, would come back and return in some capacity. They've got, of course, a new video coach here in Manitoba, but you never know. And like I said, I knew when he was here, the organization from top down absolutely loved him and everything about him. And like I said, he was a really well respected for his what he was able to do as a professional in terms of his video coaching, but also just for who he was as a human being. So sad. It was a sad day, couple days, of course, hearing that news, and for his family and for his, you know, extended Moose family, and for those of us who knew him both professionally and personally. So sad to see hear the news. And it was really, you know, like I said, it's just, he's only 44 years old, and that's just way too early. So if you want to read more about Richard and his life, there's a really nice obituary. I linked to it yesterday in the notes. That was the first note on the morning papers. There's a link to his obituary, and you can make donations to there's charities in Ottawa, because that's where he was from. So you know, we wish his family all the best, and the Moose, again, their family, all the best, because it's not an easy time for that organization, and it's not easy for any of us who knew him, and unfortunately had to hear the news that he was no longer with us.
Yeah, that's very upsetting. Well spoken on your part there, and there's no easy way to transition away from that. So I do apologize for putting you a little bit on the spot there, but I didn't want. Okay. I knew you were going to remember, but I didn't want to leave it to the end of the show as well. So
no, I appreciate it.
Yeah, we do extend our condolences there to Richard and his family, and of course, in the entire True North organization on that passing, because you know, it is you know, this is candy. You know, sports is candy in the grand scheme of things. So and we always take it very seriously, but it's when a dose of reality comes our way, it sort of does put things back into perspective a little bit. What's happening in that poll? We got about 20 minutes left in the who are you rooting for poll between the Panthers, the Oilers, and nobody at all. So who is leading in that one?
With just a shade under 150 votes. The Panthers at 44% are currently winning, and then equal 28%, 28%.
Nobody
and the Oilers. So there you go.
That I think that's probably a bit of a problem. You know, if the NHL really wanted to be, you know, wanted to actually consider things, you know, organically, and really, you know, consider the ramifications of a lot of their actions. You know, there's hundreds of you sitting here on June the 8th watching us talk about the Winnipeg Jets, when, I'll be blunt, there hasn't been a stitch of Winnipeg Jets news this week. And it's a beautiful day outside from what I saw before. I'm now in my windowless bunker, but it looked like a bright sunny day earlier. And yet, at the same time, so many of you have no real, you know, interest in the Stanley Cup final, which is set to start later on tonight. So that seems like it should be a little incongruent at that point in time, but the NHL always knows best, and what doesn't matter what its fans have to say. Want to make mention of another thing. The Young Stars tournament is coming back again this year. So it was announced, was that a couple days ago, I guess it was announced now that the Young Stars tournament featuring the Jets, the Flames, the Oilers, and the Canucks will be back in Penticton, British Columbia, September 13th through 16th. So that sort of gives a little bit of a time frame for when things are going to ramp up, because we know the Young Stars competition going to be right in that middle of September time frame, and then you begin to see the domino effect of the training camp and the start of the season and everything else after that. So the Jets are back in Penticton to talk about that. Yes, you mentioned me in the private chat, Elias Salomonsson. His agent was on.
No, assistant coach.
Me, the assistant coach. His assistant coach,
Pierre Janssen.
There you go. Not a household name necessarily for hockey fans here in North America.
I think he was like, if I recall correctly, Calgary Flames 7th round pick.
Wow. Do you know what year?
2007.
Yeah. I won't fact check. I won't fact check you on that one whatsoever. But I'll give you props there. He was on. He's the assistant coach in Sweden for the different team. Did you get it right?
No, 2002.
2002. Close.
He was a 7th rounder though.
Okay, well, there you go. You got the 7th round part. So he was on Jets at Noon with Jimmy and Cam Poitras on CJOB. And he talked about Salomonsson and his development and his performance this year. Maybe you paraphrase for the audience what he sort of had to say about the very intriguing and certainly the Jets' best prospect on the right side of the defense, and probably for a lot of people now, maybe even higher, more tantalizing than say Ville Heinola is.
Well, yeah, right side, left side. So you're right. Like the left side is a little deeper organizationally than the right. So at least from the prospect pool. But again, Simon Lundmark. I will mention Simon Lundmark, the 2019 second rounder. Everybody thinks about Ville Heinola, the 2019 first rounder. I believe that was the year that, similar to this year, Drew. I think the Jets only had 4 picks in 2019. Who were they? Heinola, Lundmark. I want to say Nikkanen was the 4th rounder. And who was the last pick in 2019 that the Jets made? Don't tell me, but just give me a clue.
Okay. Hang on. I got to look it up first. I don't know off the top of my head either.
I'm right though. They only had 4 picks that year, and I got 3.
They had 5 that year. In fact,
they had 5. Okay.
They had 2 5th round picks. One of them was a goaltender.
In 2019.
Yeah. They had 2 5th round picks.
Oh.
You want me to just tell you now?
Yeah, just tell me.
It was Harrison Bladell,
yeah,
and Logan Neaton.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Logan Neaton was interesting because Logan Neaton was basically Connor Hellebuck part 2.0, drafted in the 5th round. I forgot he was 2019. Drafted in the 5th round from Michigan, was going to the same college as Connor Hellebuck.
UMass Lowell is where he played his first 2 years. Briefly.
Yeah. And then he went to Miami, Ohio, right?
Yeah, Miami, Ohio now. Exactly right.
Well, no, not anymore. Now he's I think he signed with the
he finished he played last year with Miami.
No, but I'm saying I'm pretty sure he signed with the Jets. Didn't sign him. They lost the window to sign him, but he signed with, I think he played for the Arizona organization, if I recall correctly. I think he played in Arizona. I think he signed with their club, their farm team. I could be wrong, but he was playing the CHL, I believe, if I recall correctly. But anyways, this isn't a Logan Neaton show. We're talking about Elias Salomonsson.
Right.
But no, I was just saying on the right side in terms of prospects, right? You've got Simon Lundmark, the 2019 second rounder. And I will say both Mark Morrison and Craig Heisinger in our end of season spoke about Lundmark. Morrison did it in the end of season media availability, spoke about the jump that Lundmark made. Lundmark's like a DeMello light, not flashy, not that exciting, but he's a pretty solid defenseman. And Eric Dubois, who I talked to, I want to say back in December, the Moose, this defensive coach, talked about him winning those 50-50 battles. And that was the biggest problem for him previously in the year prior. But they really saw a jump in his ability to win those 50-50 battles. And so organizationally, I think they were very happy with the growth that he saw. But again, he's not a player who's that exciting. He's not flashy like Dylan DeMello. So he's not one who gets mentioned very much. But Elias Salomonsson, again, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert. I didn't watch the Swedish Hockey League. I know that he won the championship with Skellefteå. And yeah, Drew, to get to the point that you were just making. So Pierre Johnson was on with Cam and Jim, or I think Cam did a one-on-one chat with him. And the comments he made were as follows. Well, he made a number of comments. Again, those are on the website if you want to, legalcurve.com, if you want to check them out. One of the things he said that I thought was curious was he said, I'm not going to be surprised if we see him in the show next year.
Right.
And
the show is not the AHL.
I was going to say, as much as I love covering the AHL, the AHL is not considered the show. So his assistant coach is saying that he could see him in the NHL. You know, he said, and I don't remember the exact quote, but it was something like, go there and take a job. And that's the mentality. And that's the mentality you've got to have.
Especially because there's a vacancy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
no, exactly.
or I mean, maybe not a vacancy per se, but there's, whatever is currently there.
Yeah.
It maybe is not that appealing. It's like, okay, you'd like to see somebody come in and give you a little bit of filet mignon to avoid the rump steak that you might have with all. And I don't mean to denigrate any of the players I'm talking about here, but there's, you want somebody to come in and with that mindset is come in and make it so that we have to make a tough decision. We have to put somebody into the press box that's making a lot of money because you just performed in such a way that you said you weren't going to give up this job, at least to start. And that's got to be the mindset.
And one of the other comments that he made, which again was interesting, and Cam had said something like, if the 2022 draft was held over again, would you see Salomonsson as a first rounder? And his response was, for sure, absolutely, no doubt about it. So, I mean,
well, because if I recall correctly, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this one, Dave. His draft year, the year that he was draft eligible, he had a number of injuries which caused him to fall to the second round, and that's why a lot of people. I remember when the draft happened, a lot of people thought the Jets might be getting a bit of a steal here, a guy who had a lot of a first round pedigree. A lot of that, was probably a year earlier targeted or earmarked as a first round pick, who fell to the second because he didn't have that great season, injuries and everything causing his stock to fall a little bit. So if it falls a bit, and the Jets are, end up being the victor as a result of that, then that's all the better for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah. And so to me, and remember the other thing that bears reminder, I guess, is that Salomonsson was one of the last cuts, and the Jets were obviously, as an organization, seriously considering keeping him with the Manitoba Moose last season, right? He was, assigned to the Moose and spent, I want to say, another 3, 4, 5 days with Manitoba while the organization was considering what would be best for his development next season. And they ultimately chose to send him back to Sweden and give him a chance to be back home and grow as a player overseas. Mm-hmm. And again, we now expect him to be here in North America playing, like I said, whether it's with the Winnipeg Jets, whether it's with the Manitoba Moose, we'll find out. If it's with the Moose, I mean, I guess the one positive, if you're upset that he's not playing in the NHL yet, is that he'll be playing monster minutes for the Manitoba Moose. So that'll be, a big opportunity for him. But again, like I said, training camp is a whole question mark. And that to me is where guys can elevate. I don't know how many people thought, especially with Ville Heinola's waiver exemption, if anybody expected Ville Heinola last year to be played, to have made the team. Now, look, could Rick Bowness have been blowing smoke and saying, well, of course he would have been on
but I don't
this
get the impression that he was blowing smoke.
I don't know. Well, based on what we saw with Ville Heinola, everybody saw what he was doing last year. He looked really good in training camp. He looked really good in the preseason games. So I don't think he was blowing smoke, but I'm just saying that they would have had to have made a decision. They would have had to actually waive someone and take a risk in order to keep a guy who's waiver exempt, again. So we'll see what they do with Salomonsson. But like I said, that's why I think training camp will be so fascinating to watch this year. And obviously we've got a long way to go between June 8th. Shout out to my Uncle Yossel. It's his birthday today. So big birthday shout out to Uncle Yossel. Yes. And but
you need your liver checked on, go to Yossel.
Yeah, he's trying to retire, but if you do need a liver situation, if you have a liver situation, you can give him a call. Well, don't give him a call, but give the HSC a call. And then You go from then till September. And one thing we do in Manitoba, we don't rush summer. We want to enjoy summer. We're going to try and enjoy it every day. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. But it will be very fascinating to watch in 3 months' time to see what exactly what kind of things are happening at training camp.
Well, I think the next 3 weeks, the next 4 weeks are going to be, particularly interesting. I would agree with what you have to say. I mean, look, the final starts tonight, and we know the NHL doesn't want things overshadowing the final. But at the same time, this is beginning when you begin to see news drop, maybe not on game days, but on the days in between. Because there's only so much ink that you can fill, especially with 2 days between games after each travel. So remember, there's 2 days between games 2 and 3, and there's 2 days between games 4 and 5, and there's 2 days between games 5 and 6, and there's 2 days between games 6 and 7, assuming it goes that far, and who knows how long it actually goes. That's a separate issue entirely. But this is where you're going to start to see more news, more things, more of the silly season begin, and that's what everyone's waiting for now. And the Jets are going to be certainly a player in the proverbial silly season, whether it's, signing some of the guys who are pending free agents, whether it's, trading guys, whether it's, making tweaks on the roster that way. Every team is a participant to some degree. And that's what, the next 3 weeks to a month are all about. And then it'll quickly, die off, and that'll be, into sort of full on summer mode at that point in time. They'll do the prospects and everything else. And, last year that was a lot of fun for a lot of people. They went out to the Iceplex or whatever the hell it's called now, and
Hockey for All Center.
Thank you. And got to see some of the players, the young players who had just been drafted and all that. But it's really going to be, the next month should be a bit of a sprint, I would say, at that point in time, rather than sort of the bit of the lull that we've been in since the Jets officially hired Scott Arniel. But this week, to what we talked about with Jamie about 30 minutes ago or so, I would expect the Jets to announce an assistant coach or two this week. It seems
for sure.
That they themselves said in the press conference to introduce Scott Arniel that they wanted that to happen sooner rather than later, because these guys need to start figuring out their approach for next season and getting everybody on the same page and everything else. And you don't want that to drift into July too much or any further than that, because the hockey season, the hockey world does shut down late July, early August or so.
Yeah, no, there's no question about it. And you're right, it will be really interesting, this run up to the draft. And I was looking, Bailey asked when development camp is going to be, and I didn't realize, because usually there's that gap between the draft and the July 1st,
the agency, yeah.
But it actually won't be this year, because the draft is the 28th, 29th.
Yeah.
They probably will not start development camp on the Sunday, which is the 30th. So my guess is they're either going to start it on the 1st, which will be weird, because we'll be down. I guess we'd be at Hockey for All Center rather than at.
I bet you they start on the Tuesday, maybe they
unless they start development camp on the Tuesday. Yeah.
But, well, I was talking to somebody from a different organization, and what he told me is that their entire operation, normally they go to the draft and you go home and you go to wherever to prepare for free agency. This person told me that they're just setting up in Vegas for a week. Like basically the and this is a number of the different teams in the league are doing this, that they're
in advance of the draft or after the draft.
They're going to go, they go for the draft, and then they're extending it past free agency. So
Gotcha.
if the draft is the 28th of June, 28th, 29th, that they're planning on being in Vegas, say from the 26th, like the a couple days before the draft till after free agency. Like their hub is not going to necessarily be in the home city of the team that they work for, or that they're representing, but actually they're just going to move lock, stock, and barrel to Vegas and really do everything from there, because the schedule is so compact.
Oh, awesome. Vegas in June. Who would not want to be in 45-degree weather?
Exactly. You're just going to have people wilting. You're just going to have
all these Canadians walking around just completely like lobster-esque.
Just invest in sunscreen. Whatever you're going to do, go invest in some sunscreen stock, because you're just it's just going to be absurdly hot to spend that long of a time in Vegas for that long. But that's just the compact schedule this year is sort of silly in that sense, that that's how teams are sort of figuring this is the best way we can go about it, as opposed to flying to Vegas for the draft, flying back to wherever. Just go there, stay there, work from there, and try to make the best of a bit of a weird situation.
Work hard, play hard.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you're in Vegas for a week, you're going to be doing some things. The playing hard, like 3 days. I mean, I know you're the king of Vegas. I know you can do Vegas like nobody else, but a week in Vegas is not, or a week on the strip in Vegas is not a recipe for health, is what I would describe it as.
Yeah, that's true. You can, well, I mean, hey, Drew, it's all about what you make with it. I mean, you could go to Zion in Utah, take a 4-hour ride, go check
National Park, right?
Check out the national park in Utah. Maybe see if the new hockey team, how they're doing. If they've picked a name, they're down to their final 6. Which of the final 6, by the way, do you like?
I like the.
Should we do a new poll?
No, we don't have time for a new poll, but I like Utah Mammoth. I think Utah Yeti is a little too cutesy. I understand it. I like it. But Utah Mammoth to me is just, that's a good one.
Mammoth, not plural.
Not plural, just mammoth. Like, like this is, because it's sort of, I feel mountains, I feel skiing, I feel it's just grandiose. I thought Utah Mammoth has got that sort of, it's different than a lot of the other names a lot of the other nicknames. So I would go, if I had to choose, and I can assure you they're not really consulting with me, I'm going to vote for the Utah Mammoth.
Yeah, Rob says, don't be a party pooper, Drew. Let the
we're
people
about to end the show. We can do a poll next Saturday. We're going to, at that point in time.
Well, I mean, so you're not a fan of the Utah Hockey Club? A little too soccer-esque?
It doesn't have anything, I have no problem with soccer.
I believe in Europe that a lot of the times they've got stuff like that.
Yeah, they do. There's a ton of that. Like, it's a very soccer sort of thing to do, or Toronto FC if you want their football club. To me, you're starting it's a new opportunity to sort of rebrand the organization that has been a laughingstock for so long. So do something that's just profound or powerful, and say we're turning the page on the previous on the previous organization, and we're starting new. So that's sort of why I like Mammoth. Do you have a preference? I'll ask you the same question.
No, not particularly. I kind of like Outlaws, but I mean it has a bit of a football field more than hockey. Yeah. But and I saw that, what I will get. Once again, fan creativity wins the day, because I did see a lot of people, coming up with some sort of creative. Mammoth is good too. It's just you're more inclined to be like Mammoth versus Mammoth. But Grandma Mema.
Mema? Who thought an immigrant would have a pony?
But anyways, yeah. So we'll see. I mean, the reality is, if that's the only thing we're talking about with the Utah Hockey Club, but ticket sales won't be a problem. It seems like they've sold out plus some for where do they play again? Where the Jazz play? What's the name of the arena?
Yeah, I mean, it used to be the Delta Center. I don't know if it's still that's when it was. I remember it as the Jazz playing there. I don't know what the name of it is now. It's all the same arena. They need to get a new arena, and they will in due time, undoubtedly. Let's wrap it up. It's almost 11 o'clock. My family
Delta Center, by the way.
There you go. My family wants to spend
the Delta Center.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. My family wants to spend some time with me. Big thanks to Jamie Thomas for joining us. Big thanks to all of you for joining us on this morning's edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. In case you missed any of it, the instant replay is on the YouTube channel. The podcast will be up soon enough as well. As soon as Dave M gets that going, we ask you to smash the like button. We ask you to subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the channel, leave us feedback here, there, and everywhere. That's what we like you to do for us here after we bring you this show each and every Saturday morning. Big thanks to our sponsors. That is our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, City Place, Grid Park, Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, Betway, Tough Duck, Boston Pizza, and of course Seagram's. Support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. We'll be back next Saturday morning for the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, unless news breaks during the week, in which case we might pop up with a pop-up show. And the website, illegalcurve.com, is updated all the time whenever Winnipeg Jets news breaks. You just go to the one-stop shop for all your latest Winnipeg Jets news. Thanks to all of you for joining us. If you're looking for something to do tonight, please do it safely. Great couple shows happening at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club. Get your tickets now. For Dave Minuk, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Thanks for listening to this broadcast from Illegal Curve Hockey. For more great Illegal Curve content, subscribe to the Illegal Curve YouTube channel, Follow at Illegal Curve on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and visit your online home for hockey in Winnipeg, illegalcurve.com.